I'm Joshua, 38 years old, and my father destroyed $5,000 worth of technology with a baseball bat because I wouldn't let his favorite son steal from my child. Before I tell you about the police cars, the handcuffs, and the look on my mother's face when she realized she was homeless, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I read every single one. To understand why a grown man would take a piece of lumber to a computer tower, you have to understand the machine itself. This wasn't just a computer. It wasn't something we picked up at Best Buy on a whim. This was a masterpiece. It was a symbol of my son Caleb's grit. 3 months ago, Caleb came to me with a proposal. He's 16, a quiet kid, incredibly smart, the kind of kid who takes apart toasters just to see how the springs work. He pulled up a spreadsheet on his old, lagging laptop. He had itemized everything. The graphics card alone, an RTX 4090, cost more than my first car. The processor, the cooling system, the RAM, the case that looked more like a spaceship than a piece of hardware. The total came out to just over $5,000. I looked at him and said, "Bud, that's a lot of money. I can't just write a check for that." Caleb didn't blink. He said, "I know, Dad. I don't want you to pay for it. I want to earn it. I just need you to help me find the work." That was the start of the longest, hottest summer of Caleb's life. And honestly, it was one of the proudest times of my life as a father. We live in a suburb where people are particular about their lawns, and Caleb became the neighborhood landscaping tycoon. I'm talking about waking up at 5 a.m. to beat the heat, pushing a heavy mower up steep inclines, trimming hedges until his arms shook. I remember one afternoon in July. It was 95 degrees out with humidity that felt like a wet blanket. I came home from work, and there was Caleb, red-faced, covered in grass clippings, drinking from the garden hose in our front yard. He had just finished the miller's yard down the street, a massive corner lot that usually takes a crew of 2 guys. I walked over to him. "You okay, son?" He wiped sweat from his eyes, grinning. $300 this week, Dad. I'm halfway there." He didn't spend a dime on ice cream, movies, or video games. Every single dollar went into a jar on his desk labeled, "The Beast." That's what he called the PC. He saved his allowance, his birthday money, and every cent from his labor. He even took odd jobs painting fences and cleaning gutters. He learned about the value of a salary before he even had a real job. He treated this project like it was his own personal college fund, investing in his future happiness. By late August, the jar was full. We ordered the parts. When the boxes arrived, it was like Christmas morning, but better, because he had bought these gifts for himself. We spent the entire weekend building it. This is where my background in IT came in handy, but I let Caleb do the heavy lifting. I wanted him to feel the snap of the RAM sticks clicking into the motherboard. I wanted him to apply the thermal paste. We spent 4 hours just cable managing the back of the case because Caleb wanted it to look perfect through the glass side panel. When we finally pressed the power button, and those RGB fans lit up in a synchronized wave of neon blue and purple, Caleb's face just lit up. The cooling liquid started flowing through the tubes. The fans hummed a low, powerful note, and the monitor flickered to life with the BIOS screen. "We did it," he whispered. "You did it," I corrected him. "You built this. Nobody can take that away from you." I believed that when I said it. I really did. I thought hard work and property rights meant something. I didn't account for my brother, Julian. See, my family dynamic is complicated. I've been a single dad for a long time. My divorce was tough, but it taught me to be independent. I learned that you only really have what you fight for. My parents, Robert and Linda, on the other hand, have a very different philosophy. In their world, the squeaky wheel doesn't just get the grease. The squeaky wheel gets the whole car. And Julian? Julian is the squeakiest wheel you've ever heard. Julian is 28 years old. He has no job, no ambition, and a long list of excuses. He still lives with my parents, or rather, he lives in the house my grandmother, Grandma Rose, lets them all live in. That's a crucial detail. Grandma Rose is the matriarch. She's 88, sharp as a tack, and tough as nails. She owns the big Victorian house on Elm Street. My dad, Robert, retired early with a minimal pension that barely covers his beer tab. And my mom, Linda, has never worked a day in her life. They all live off Grandma Rose's generosity. The weekend after we finished the build, Grandma Rose called me. She wasn't feeling well, just a bit of vertigo, and she wanted me to come over and check on some things around the house. She trusts me. She knows I'm the only one in the family who knows how to fix a leaky faucet without causing a flood. "Bring Caleb," she said over the phone. "I haven't seen my great-grandson in weeks. And tell him to bring that fancy computer machine I heard about. I want to see what all the fuss is." I hesitated. I knew Julian would be there. I knew my dad would be there. But Grandma Rose asked, and you don't say no to Grandma Rose. Plus, Caleb was eager to show off his creation. He was proud. He wanted his grandpa to say, "Good job, kid." He wanted that validation. We packed the beast up carefully. We put the tower in the back seat of my truck, buckled in with a seatbelt like it was a baby. Caleb held the monitor on his lap. "Are you sure Uncle Julian won't mess with it?" Caleb asked as we pulled out of the driveway. I gripped the steering wheel. "I won't let him, Caleb. It's your property. You paid for it. Besides, we'll be right there." If I could go back to that moment, I would have turned the truck around. I would have driven us to a different state. I would have done anything to avoid pulling into that driveway. But I didn't know that I was driving my son straight into an ambush. I didn't know that by the end of the night, I'd be talking to a lawyer about restraining orders and property damage. We pulled up to the house. It's a beautiful place, old and sprawling, with a big wraparound porch. My dad's truck was in the driveway, alongside Julian's beat-up sedan that hasn't moved in 6 months because he can't afford gas. As we unloaded the gear, I saw the curtain in the living room twitch. They were watching. They were waiting. I carried the tower inside. The air conditioning was blasting, a stark contrast to the heat outside. My dad was sitting in his recliner watching baseball, a beer already in his hand at 2 p.m. Mom was in the kitchen. Julian was nowhere to be seen, which usually meant he was asleep or gaming. "Hey, Dad," I said, setting the PC down on the dining room table carefully. Robert grunted, not looking away from the TV. "You're late. Grandma's upstairs." "Hi, Grandpa," Caleb said, carrying the peripherals. Robert glanced at him, then at the equipment. "What's all that junk?" "It's not junk," Caleb said, his voice firm but respectful. "It's my PC. I built it." "Waste of time," Robert muttered, turning back to the game. "Should be studying or playing a real sport." I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. The disapproval. The dismissal. It was the soundtrack of my childhood. But I let it slide. We were here for Grandma Rose. We set the PC up in the sunroom, which was Grandma's favorite spot. She wanted Caleb near her while she knitted. We plugged it in, and the lights flared to life. "Oh my," Grandma Rose said, walking in with her cane. She looked frail, but her eyes were bright. "It looks like a disco in a box." Caleb beamed. "It's liquid-cooled, Grandma. Look at the temperature gauges." He started explaining the specs to her, and she listened intently, asking questions that showed she was actually paying attention. It was a nice moment, peaceful moment. Then, I heard heavy footsteps on the stairs. Thud, thud, thud. Julian walked into the room. He was wearing boxer shorts and a stained t-shirt, scratching his stomach. He looked like he hadn't showered in 3 days. He blinked at the neon lights emanating from the corner. "Whoa," Julian said, his eyes widening. "What is that?" "Caleb's computer," I said, stepping between him and the desk instinctively. Julian pushed past me, ignoring my personal space. He leaned in close to the glass panel, his breath fogging it up slightly. "RTX 4090? Is that Is that the Supreme Liquid X model? Yeah, Caleb said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. Julian whistled low. That's top tier. That's exactly what I need. He turned to look at me, a greedy glint in his eyes. Hey Josh, good to see you. You know, my stream has been tanking lately. Frame rate drops, lag, the works. My viewers are complaining. I've been telling Mom I need an upgrade to really go pro. Hello, Julian, I said coldly. Maybe you should get a job and save up for one. That's what Caleb did. Julian laughed, a dry, humorless sound. A job? In this economy? Come on, bro. I'm building a brand. It takes time. He turned back to the computer, his fingers twitching as if he wanted to grab it right then and there. So, how much did this run you? Caleb spent $5,000. I said. $5,000. Julian's jaw dropped. Then, his expression shifted from awe to indignation. He looked at Caleb, then at me, then shouted toward the living room. "Mom, Dad, you gotta see what Joshua bought for the kid." My stomach dropped. The peace was over. The storm had arrived. The dynamic in this house has always been the same, stretching back 30 years. I am the provider, the worker, the one who is expected to be responsible. Julian is the dreamer, which is just a polite family euphemism for a leech. And my parents? They are the enforcers of this twisted socialism where my success is public property and Julian's failures are everyone's burden. When Julian yelled, my mother, Linda, came rushing out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. What is it? Is someone hurt? Look at this. Julian pointed an accusing finger at Caleb's masterpiece. Joshua dropped $5,000 on a toy for Caleb. $5,000. Meanwhile, I'm trying to launch a career with a potato, and nobody lifts a finger to help me. Mom looked at the computer, the spinning lights reflecting in her eyes. She didn't see the engineering. She saw the dollar signs. She turned to me, her face pinching into that look of disappointment I knew so well. Joshua, is that true? You spent that much money on a game. I didn't spend it, I said, keeping my voice level. Caleb did. He worked all summer, mowing lawns, fixing fences. He earned every penny. He's 16. Mom scoffed. What does a 16-year-old need with a supercomputer? He should be saving for his college fund, not wasting it on this. It's his money, I repeated. He can do what he wants with it. My dad, Robert, lumbered in from the living room, annoyed that his baseball game was interrupted. What's the yelling about? Joshua bought Caleb a NASA computer, Julian whined, playing the victim perfectly. And he knows. I've been needing a rig like this for my channel. It's like he's rubbing it in my face. Robert looked at the machine, then at me. You know your brother has been struggling, Josh. He's trying to get this internet thing off the ground. Dad, Julian is 28, I said, feeling the heat rise in my neck. He's been getting it off the ground for 6 years. Caleb mowed lawns for 3 months. There is no comparison. It's about family, Robert said, his voice dropping an octave, the tone he used when he was about to give a lecture. Family helps family. If you had that kind of cash lying around to give the boy for chores, you could have helped your brother out. I didn't give him the money for chores, I snapped. He worked for neighbors. He ran a business. And Julian isn't entitled to Caleb's labor. Caleb shrank back into his chair. I could see him trembling slightly. He hates conflict. He's a gentle soul. He just wanted to play Cyberpunk in 4K, not start World War III. I looked over at Grandma Rose. She was sitting in her armchair, knitting needles clicking rhythmically. She hadn't said a word yet, but her eyes were darting back and forth between us, sharp and assessing. She was watching the whole scene play out like a judge in a courtroom. This situation triggered a memory so vivid I could almost smell the plastic. I was 12 years old. I had saved up my allowance for months to buy a specific Lego set, the big pirate ship. I built it on the kitchen table, proud of every cannon and sail. Julian, who was 2 at the time, saw it and started crying. He wanted it. My dad didn't even hesitate. Give it to him, Josh. He's the baby. But I built it, I had argued. It's mine. Don't be selfish, Dad had growled. He took the ship from my hands and gave it to Julian. Within 5 minutes, Julian had smashed it against the floor, scattering the pieces everywhere. Dad just shrugged and said, "It's just plastic. Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about." That was the lesson I learned. My ownership is conditional. Julian's desires are absolute. But I wasn't 12 anymore. And this wasn't Legos. And most importantly, this wasn't about me. It was about my son. "Can I just try it out?" Julian asked, changing tactics. His voice went soft, wheedling. "Just to see the difference? I want to see how Call of Duty runs on it." Caleb looked at me. I nodded slightly. "You can play around, but don't mess with the settings." Julian sat down. The chair groaned under his weight. He didn't just play. He started digging through the system files. He opened the device manager. He was drooling over the specs. "Man," Julian muttered, "this is insane. With this setup, I could stream at 4K 60 frames per second. I could finally get sponsorships. This is my ticket." He swiveled around in the chair. "Hey, Caleb, tell you what, since you're just a kid and you have school starting soon, why don't you let me borrow this for a while? Just until Christmas? You can't play that much during the school year anyway." "No," Caleb said, just like that, quiet but firm. "Excuse me?" Julian blinked, acting shocked. "No," Caleb repeated, louder this time. "It's mine. I built it. I'm taking it home." Julian's face turned red. He stood up. "You selfish little brat. I'm trying to build a career here. You're just playing games." "So are you," Caleb shot back. "Hey!" Robert shouted, stepping forward. "Don't talk to your uncle like that." "Then tell Uncle Julian to stop begging for my stuff," Caleb said. I was shocked. Caleb never talked back. But I was also incredibly proud. He had a spine. "That's enough." I stepped in. "Julian, get off the chair. We're done here. We came to visit Grandma, not to be harassed." "It's not fair," Julian yelled, looking at Mom. "Look at him. He's hoarding it. He doesn't even appreciate what he has." "Joshua," Mom pleaded, putting a hand on my arm. "Think about it. Julian has been so depressed lately. This could really turn things around for him. Maybe you could leave it here? Just for the weekdays? Caleb can use it on weekends." "Are you insane?" I stared at her. "You want my son to leave a $5,000 machine here so Julian can spill Mountain Dew on it and burn out the GPU mining crypto or whatever he does? Absolutely not. We raised you better than this," Dad spat. "Sharing is caring. You've become arrogant, Josh. Just because you have a good salary and a fancy truck, you think you're better than us." "I think I respect property," I said. "And I respect my son." I looked at Grandma Rose again. She had stopped knitting. She was looking at the PC, then at Julian, then at Dad. "Lunch is ready," Grandma Rose said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. "Meatloaf. Everyone wash up." The sudden shift in topic threw everyone off. Dad grunted and headed for the kitchen. Mom gave me a look of pure disappointment and followed him. Julian glared at Caleb, muttered something that sounded like a threat, and stomped off. "Don't worry," I whispered to Caleb. "I've got your back. We eat. We say goodbye to Grandma. And we leave." Caleb nodded, but he looked terrified. He knew, just like I knew, that the silence wasn't the end of the fight. It was just the deep breath before the plunge. We went into the dining room. The table was set with Grandma's nice china. We sat down. The tension was thick enough to choke on. The clinking of silverware on porcelain sounded like gunshots. I sat facing the hallway that led to the sunroom. I wanted to keep the PC in my line of sight, but the way the dining room was angled, I couldn't see the desk directly. I had to trust that Julian was eating with us. And he was sitting opposite me, shoveling meatloaf into his mouth, his eyes darting around aggressively. "So, Caleb," Grandma Rose said, breaking the silence, "tell me more about how you earned the money. Did you do the Thompsons' yard? That hill is a nightmare." "Yes, ma'am," Caleb said politely. "Mr. Thompson paid me extra because I weed-whacked the fence line too." "Good boy," Grandma nodded. "Honest work pays off. Unless you're lucky," Julian muttered around a mouthful of potatoes. "Some people just get lucky." "Luck had nothing to do with it," I said. "Whatever," Julian said. "Must be nice to have everything handed to you." The irony was so thick I almost choked. Julian, living rent-free, eating food he didn't buy, in a house he didn't own, accusing a 16-year-old of having things handed to him. I checked my watch. 1:30 p.m. We would leave by 2 o'clock. Just 30 more minutes. But then Julian stood up. "I gotta use the bathroom." He walked out of the dining room. The bathroom was down the hall past the sunroom. I waited 10 seconds. Then I stood up. "Sit down, Josh," Dad barked. "We're eating." "I'm just getting a napkin," I lied. I walked to the hallway. I didn't hear the bathroom door close. I heard something else. A zipper. The sound of Velcro ripping. The sound of cables being yanked. I broke into a run. I rounded the corner into the sunroom and froze. The adrenaline hit me instantly, sharp and cold. Julian wasn't using the bathroom. He was behind the desk on his knees. He had disconnected the power cable, the HDMI, and the Ethernet. He was currently struggling to shove the massive tower into a large blue IKEA bag he must have pulled from the closet. "Put it down," I said. My voice was low, dangerous. I surprised myself with how calm I sounded. Julian jumped, banging his head on the underside of the desk. "Ow! Geez, Josh, you scared me." I said, "Put it down, Julian. Now." He scrambled to his feet, pulling the bag with him. The tower was heavy, mostly glass and metal, and he was struggling to lift it. I'm just moving it to my room. For safekeeping. You guys are leaving soon, and I didn't want Caleb to forget it." "He's not forgetting it," I said, stepping closer. "Because he's taking it with him. We are leaving, and that computer stays with us." "Mom said I could use it." Julian lied, his eyes desperate. "She said we could work out a sharing schedule." "I don't care what Mom said. It's not hers to give." I reached out and grabbed the handle of the IKEA bag. Julian pulled back. For a second, we were playing a tug-of-war with $5,000 of fragile electronics suspended between us. "Let go," Julian grunted. "You're so selfish. You have a house, you have a truck, you have everything. Why can't I just have this one thing?" "Because you didn't earn it," I shouted. "Hey!" We both turned. Robert was standing in the doorway. He looked massive, his face flushed red from the beer and the heat of the day. He saw us grappling over the bag. "Dad," Julian whined immediately, dropping the bag so it slammed onto the carpeted floor. My heart stopped, but the padding seemed to save it. "Josh is attacking me. I was just looking at it and he grabbed me." "Liar," I said, breathless. "He was trying to steal it." He unplugged everything. Robert walked into the room. He didn't look at the unplugged cables. He didn't look at the bag. He looked at me. "You putting your hands on your brother over a toy?" "It's not a toy, Dad. It's Caleb's property. And Julian was stealing it." "Stealing?" Robert scoffed. "In this house? You can't steal from family. It's all communal. We share in this house." "No." I shook my head, stepping between Robert and the computer. "That's not how the law works, and that's not how decency works. We are leaving. Now." I yelled out to the dining room. Caleb, get in here. We're going. Caleb ran in a second later, looking terrified. Mom followed him, wringing her hands. Grandma Rose came last, moving slowly, her face unreadable. Pack it up, Caleb, I commanded. Cables, mouse, keyboard. Let's go. Caleb rushed to the desk, his hands shaking as he gathered the cords. Stop, Robert said. His voice was like grinding gravel. Caleb froze. Leave the computer, boy, Robert said to Caleb. Dad, stop, I warned. I said leave it, Robert shouted, stepping closer to Caleb. Caleb flinched back. Your uncle needs it more than you do. You're a child. You don't need a professional machine. You're just playing games. Julian has a career to build. A career. I laughed. A harsh, bitter sound. He sits in his underwear screaming at teenagers on the internet. That's not a career, Dad. And Caleb isn't giving him a $5,000 donation to support his delusion. Watch your mouth, Robert growled. He pointed a finger in my face. I raised you better than to look down on your kin. You think you're big time? You think you're the man because you got out. I think I'm a father protecting his son, I said. Caleb, pick up the tower. Caleb reached for the tower. Don't touch it, Julian screamed. He lunged forward. I shoved Julian back. I didn't punch him. I just shoved him hard in the chest to keep him away from my son. Julian, being the drama queen he is, flailed his arms and threw himself backward, knocking over a lamp, crashed and shattered. He hit me, Julian screamed, rolling on the floor. He hit me. My back. Ow, my back. That was the trigger. Robert's eyes went black. He didn't see a father protecting his son. He saw his rebellious older son attacking his precious golden child. You come into my house? Robert roared. And you break my furniture? You assault your brother. He's acting, I yelled. I barely touched him. Get out, Robert said. He was breathing heavy, his chest heaving. Get out of my house. Gladly, I said. Caleb, grab the tower. The computer stays, Robert bellowed. As payment. For the lamp. And for hurting your brother. You are out of your mind, I said. That computer is worth more than your truck, Dad. We are taking it. If you try to stop us, I will call the police. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have threatened him with authority. Robert hates authority. He hates being told what to do. He looked around the room, his eyes wild. He was looking for something. A weapon. An equalizer. His eyes landed on the corner of the room. There, leaning against the wall, was an old aluminum baseball bat. It was mine from high school. Grandma kept it as a keepsake. Robert walked over and grabbed the bat. Robert, no. Mom screamed from the doorway. Dad, put it down, I said, stepping in front of Caleb. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Don't do this. You want to call the cops? Robert hissed. He slapped the bat against his open palm. Thwack, thwack. You want to talk about property? I'll show you property. I'll show you what happens when you prioritize things over blood. Dad, please. Julian stopped rolling around. Even he looked scared now. Dad, just make him give it to me. Don't break it. He won't give it, Robert said, staring at me. He's stubborn, just like his mother. Don't bring me into this, Mom cried. He thinks he's better than us, Robert continued, taking a step toward the desk. He thinks his son is too good to share. He thinks this machine is more important than his brother's future. It's not about the machine, I yelled. It's about respect. It's about theft. It's about selfishness. Robert roared. He raised the bat. Run, Caleb, I said, pushing my son toward the door. Go to the car. No, Dad, Caleb cried. My PC. Leave it, I screamed. But Caleb didn't leave. He tried to grab the tower. Robert swung. The sound of an aluminum bat hitting tempered glass is not a sound you ever want to hear. It's not a thud. It's a sickening crunch pop followed by the tinkling of 1,000 tiny diamonds hitting the floor. Robert didn't swing at me. He didn't swing at Caleb. He swung directly at the side panel of the PC. Smash! The glass exploded. Shards flew everywhere. Caleb screamed. A high, terrified sound that cut right through me. He scrambled backward, covering his face. "Dad!" I tackled my father. I didn't think, I just reacted. I slammed my shoulder into his midsection, driving him back against the wall. He was strong for an old man, fueled by rage and adrenaline. He shoved me off, sending me stumbling into the coffee table. I fell hard, my hip taking the brunt of the impact. "You want to fight me?" Robert yelled, brandishing the bat. "In my house." He turned back to the computer. The side was open now, the expensive components exposed like organs in a surgery. The fans were still spinning, the lights still flickering erratically. "No!" Caleb sobbed. "Please, Grandpa, no. That's my 4,090. This." Robert pointed the bat at the graphics card. "This is what makes you better than us? This is what makes you say no to family." Wham! He brought the bat down vertically, stabbing it into the case. I heard the motherboard crack. I heard plastic snapping. He twisted the bat, ripping wires out. "Robert, stop it!" Mom was screaming, pulling at his arm. He shook her off like a fly. "He needs to learn." Robert was panting, sweat dripping down his face. "He needs to learn that you don't hoard wealth when your family is starving." "Julian isn't starving," I yelled, scrambling to my feet. "He's lazy." Robert swung again. This time he hit the monitor. It was a 32-inch 4K curved display. It imploded. The screen went black, then white, then spiderwebbed with cracks before falling face down onto the desk. Julian was standing in the corner, mouth open, pale as a sheet. Dad, stop. I can't use it if it's broken." "Nobody uses it," Robert yelled. "If you can't share it, nobody has it. That's the rule." He was destroying it out of spite. It wasn't about getting it for Julian anymore. It was about punishing us for defiance. It was about asserting dominance. I looked at Caleb. He was on his knees, staring at the wreckage of his summer. Tears were streaming down his face, but he was silent now. He looked broken. That hurt me more than the bat ever could. Robert took one final swing, knocking the entire tower off the desk. It hit the floor with a heavy, metallic crash. Coolant fluid, blue and viscous, began to pool on Grandma's Persian rug. It looked like the computer was bleeding. Robert stood over the wreckage, breathing hard, the bat hanging loosely in his hand. The room was deadly silent, save for Mom's quiet sobbing and the hum of the air conditioner. "There," Robert wheezed. "Now nobody fights. Problem solved." He looked at me with a twisted sense of victory. "Take your trash and get out. And don't come back until you learn how to be a family." I stood up. My hip was throbbing. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I looked at the pile of metal and glass that used to be $5,000 of my son's hard work. I walked over to Caleb and helped him up. "Go to the truck, Caleb." "Dad," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Go to the truck. Now." Caleb turned and ran out of the room. I heard the front door slam. I turned to look at my father. I wanted to hit him. God, I wanted to hit him. I wanted to make him feel the pain he had just caused my son. But I knew that would only end with me in jail. "You are a small, pathetic man," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "You just destroyed the only relationship you had left. I hope it was worth it." "Get out," Robert said, pointing the bat at the door. "I'm going," I said. "But this isn't over. You owe Caleb $5,000. And I will get it. I will get a lawyer, I will take you to court, and I will garnish your pension until the day you die." Sue me, Robert laughed. I'm your father. No judge will side with an ungrateful son over his father in a domestic dispute. It's my house, my rules. Actually, a voice cut through the room. It was sharp, clear, and cold as ice. We all turned. Grandma Rose was standing by the doorway to the kitchen. She was holding her iPad. She wasn't looking at us. She was looking at the screen. It's not your house, Robert, Grandma Rose said. Ma, Robert said, his demeanor changing instantly. He lowered the bat. Ma, I was just teaching them a lesson. They were disrespecting the family. I saw everything, Grandma Rose said. She tapped the screen. I had security cameras installed last week. After packages started going missing from the porch. I saw Julian try to steal the machine. I saw you hit Joshua. I saw you destroy the boy's property. Ma, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, she interrupted. She looked up from the screen, and the look on her face was terrifying. It wasn't anger. It was disgust. I understand that I have raised a thief and a bully. Grandma, please, Julian started. Quiet, she snapped. Then we heard it. Whoop whoop. Sirens. Close. Very close. Robert's face went white. He dropped the bat. Clattered loudly on the floor. Ma? What did you do? I called the police, Grandma Rose said calmly. 5 minutes ago, when you picked up that bat. You called the cops on your own son? Robert looked horrified. For a computer? For violence, she corrected. And for destruction of property. And for breaking my heart. Blue and red lights flashed through the front window, washing the living room in a chaotic strobe. You need to tell them it was an accident, Robert said, panic rising in his voice. Ma, tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them I fell. Tell them anything. I will tell them the truth, Grandma Rose said. She walked over to the chair where she had been sitting and sat down, composing herself. There was a heavy pounding on the front door. Police! Open up! Robert looked at me, his eyes pleading. Josh, tell them it's okay. I'll pay for it. Promise. Just don't let them take me. You can't go to jail. I'm an old man. I looked at the blue coolant soaking into the rug. I looked at the shattered monitor. I thought about Caleb crying in the truck. I walked to the front door and opened it. 2 officers stood on the porch. One was older, Sergeant Miller. I recognized him from high school football games. The other was a rookie, hand resting on his holster. We got a call about a domestic disturbance involving a weapon, Sergeant Miller said, looking past me into the house. Is everyone okay? No, I said, stepping aside. My father, Robert, has a baseball bat. He just destroyed my son's property and assaulted me. Miller walked in, scanning the room. His eyes landed on the bat on the floor, then the pile of electronic wreckage, then my father. Sir, put your hands where I can see them, Miller ordered Robert. It's a misunderstanding, officer, Robert stammered, raising his trembling hands. It's a family matter. My son and I were just arguing. There's broken glass everywhere, Bob, Miller said. He knew my dad. This looks like more than an argument. He came at me. Robert lied. He pointed at me. I was defending myself. He attacked his brother. That is a lie, Grandma Rose said. She didn't stand up. She just held up her iPad. Officer, I have the video right here. It's saved to the cloud. The room went silent. This was the moment. The payoff. The moment the bully realizes the walls are closing in. Officer Miller walked over to Grandma Rose. He watched the screen for about 30 seconds. I watched Robert's face crumble. He watched the video of himself. A minute ago, swinging that bat like a maniac. He watched the undeniable proof of his rage. Miller handed the iPad back to Grandma. He turned to Robert. His face was hard. Robert, Turn around and place your hands behind your back. You can't be serious, Robert gasped. I'm 68 years old. You're arresting me over a computer. I'm arresting you for felony malicious destruction of property, Miller said, pulling out his handcuffs. The metal clicked, a sound much sweeter than the bat hitting the glass. That damage looks to be well over $1,000, which makes it a felony in this state. Plus, I saw you shove your son on that tape. We could add domestic battery. Linda, Robert yelled at my mom as the cuffs clicked tight. Do something. Mom was sobbing in the corner, holding a dish towel to her mouth. I don't know what to do, Bob. Call a lawyer. Robert screamed as Miller began to march him toward the door. Call Henderson. Tell him it was self-defense. We have the video, Bob, Miller said dryly. Save it for the judge. As they dragged my father out the front door, he locked eyes with me. You did this, he spat. You ungrateful, selfish brat. You ruined this family over a game. You ruined it yourself, I said quietly. Julian was pressed against the wall, trying to make himself invisible. He looked like he was about to vomit. He realized that, without Dad there to protect him, he was exposed. The rookie officer stayed behind to take statements and photos of the damage. He photographed the bat. He photographed the shattered RTX 4090. He photographed the blue stain on the rug. I'm sorry about your rig, man, the rookie said to me, shaking his head. That looked like a beast of a machine. It was, I said, my voice thick. My son built it. I went out to the truck. Caleb was sitting in the passenger seat, his knees pulled up to his chest. He saw the police car lights. He saw his grandfather in the back seat. I opened the door. It's over, Bud. Is Grandpa going to jail? Caleb asked, his voice tiny. Yes, I said. For tonight, at least. Because of me? No. I grabbed his shoulders and turned him to face me. Look at me. None of this is because of you. This is because he couldn't control his temper. This is because he tried to take something that wasn't his. You did nothing wrong. You protected what you earned. Caleb nodded, but I knew the trauma would take a long time to heal. Seeing your hero, or at least your grandfather, turn into a villain isn't something you get over in a night. I went back inside to get my keys and check on Grandma. The police had left with Robert. The rookie had finished his report and given me a case number. The prosecutor will be in touch, he said. The house was quiet now. Just the hum of the fridge and the sound of Mom crying at the kitchen table. Julian was sitting next to her, patting her back, looking shell-shocked. Grandma Rose was still in her chair. She looked tired. She looked every minute of her 88 years. Grandma, I said softly, I'm so sorry. I should have just left. I shouldn't have brought the computer. Nonsense, she said. She stood up, using her cane. She walked over to the kitchen where Mom and Julian were sitting. I followed her. Linda looked up, her eyes red and puffy. Mom, what are we going to do? Bob is in jail. We need bail money. We need a lawyer. Can you write a check? Grandma Rose stared at her daughter-in-law. She stared at her grandson, Julian. No, Grandma Rose said. What? Mom blinked. But he's your son. And he destroyed my home, Grandma said. And he attacked my family. I am done enabling this. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a key ring. It was the master set for the house. I want you out, Grandma said. Out? Julian squeaked. Out of where? Out of this house, Grandma said. Her voice didn't waver. I have let you live here rent-free for 20 years, Robert and Linda. I let Julian stay here for 28 years. I paid the bills. I bought the groceries. I thought I was helping family. But I see now I was just feeding a nest of vipers. Mom, you can't be serious. Linda stood up, panic rising. We have nowhere to go. Bob is retired. We have no savings. Then maybe Julian should get a job, Grandma said. looking at him with disdain. Or maybe Bob shouldn't have spent his pension at the bar. You can't kick us out, Julian shouted. It's illegal. We have tenants' rights. We need 30 days' notice. Grandma Rose smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who held all the cards. Actually, she said, you don't. You never signed a lease. You don't pay rent. You are guests. And guests can be asked to leave at any time, especially when they damage the property and bring the police to my door. But tonight, Linda gasped. It's almost dark. You can stay tonight, Grandma allowed, because I am not a monster. But tomorrow morning, I am changing the locks. If your things are still here, I am calling a junk removal service. And if you are still here, I am calling Sergeant Miller back to arrest you for trespassing. Grandma, please, Julian begged, tears actually forming in his eyes now. I can't go. I have my setup here. I can't afford an apartment. Then sell your setup, she said coldly. Or better yet, learn to code. I hear there's money in computers. She turned to me. Joshua, help me to my room. I'm tired. Yes, ma'am, I said. I walked her to the stairs, leaving my mother and brother wailing in the kitchen. It was a brutal scene. It was a family being torn apart by the consequences of their own entitlement. As we reached the landing, Grandma paused. She looked at me. Joshua. Yeah. Grandma. Is the computer really ruined? Yeah, I said. It's toast. The components are smashed. How much was it? 5,000. She nodded slowly. Okay. She went into her room and closed the door. I went back downstairs. Mom and Julian glared at me with pure hatred. Are you happy? Mom hissed. You destroyed us. I built a computer, I said. You guys destroyed yourselves. I walked out the front door, leaving the toxic sludge of my childhood behind me. The drive home was silent. Caleb stared out the window at the passing streetlights. I could tell he was replaying the sound of the glass shattering over and over in his head. When we got back to our apartment, Caleb went straight to his room. He didn't turn on his lights. He just flopped onto his bed. I sat in the living room, staring at the blank TV. My phone started blowing up. Texts from Mom, texts from Julian, voicemails from Dad, presumably from the station, using his one phone call to scream at me. I blocked them all. I felt a mix of emotions. Guilt? A little. Relief? Definitely. But mostly, I felt a burning need to fix this for Caleb. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on the door. I checked the peephole. It wasn't the police. It wasn't Julian. It was a courier. I opened the door. Sign here, the guy said. I signed. He handed me a thick envelope. The return address was Grandma Rose's attorney. I opened it. Inside was a check. It was for $10,000. There was a note, handwritten in Grandma's shaky script. Joshua, this is for the computer. Buy him a better one. The extra 5,000 is for pain and suffering, or whatever the lawyers call it. I'm sorry I didn't step in sooner. I'm selling the house. I'm moving into that assisted living facility by the lake, the one with the nice bingo hall. I don't need the stress anymore. Love, Grandma Rose. I stared at the check. Tears pricked my eyes. She didn't just cover the damage. She doubled it. I walked into Caleb's room. He was awake, sitting at his empty desk where the beast used to be. Hey, I said. Hey, he mumbled. I placed the check on the desk. Grandma sent this. Caleb looked at it. His eyes went wide. 10,000? Dad, that's justice, I said. And she kicked them out, Caleb. They're gone. Mom, Dad, Julian. They're out of the house. Grandma is selling it. Caleb looked at me, processing this. So, they really lost everything? They did. Because they wanted my PC? Because they were greedy, I said. And because they forgot that actions have consequences. We spent the next week planning the Beast 2.0. But before we could even order the parts, something crazy happened. I had posted the video, just the security footage Grandma sent me, on a tech forum, asking for legal advice about the property damage. I didn't expect it to go viral, but it did. The internet hates entitled family members. The video of Robert smashing the PC got millions of views. Comments poured in from all over the world. People were furious. They were doxing Julian, they were memeing my dad's face. But then, the tech community stepped up. I got an email from a representative at a major PC hardware company. I won't name them, but think big. They had seen the video. They wanted to help. "We hate seeing good hardware destroyed," the email read. "And we hate bullies. Send us Caleb's address." 2 days later, boxes started arriving. Not just parts. Top of the line, unreleased engineering samples. A custom chassis. A signed letter from the CEO. Caleb didn't just rebuild his PC. He built a supercomputer that rivaled NASA's. Meanwhile, the fallout for my family was catastrophic. Dad pled guilty to a lesser charge to avoid jail time, but he has a felony record now. He's on probation for 2 years. He has to pay restitution, which Grandma already covered, but the court ordered him to pay her back. Mom and Dad are living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the bad side of town. It's all they can afford on Dad's pension without Grandma's free housing. And Julian? Julian had to get a job. He's working at a warehouse moving boxes. He hates it. He texts me sometimes from burner numbers, begging for money, blaming me for ruining his life. I delete them without reading. A few months later, we went to visit Grandma Rose at her new place. It was nice, quiet. She looked 10 years younger without the stress of carrying 3 deadbeat adults on her back. Caleb brought his laptop, the new one, to show her photos of the new build. "It looks even better than the first one," Grandma said, smiling. "It is," Caleb said. "And nobody is ever going to touch this one." "Damn straight," Grandma said. She squeezed my hand. "You did good, Joshua. You broke the cycle." I looked at my son, confident and happy. I looked at my grandmother, at peace. "Yeah," I said. "I guess I did." The wheels of justice turn slowly, but when they finally crush you, they don't leave much behind. 3 months after the incident, I stood in the hallway of the county courthouse. The fluorescent lights hummed with that headache-inducing flicker that seems to exist only in government buildings. Caleb wasn't with me. I didn't want him there. I didn't want him to see his grandfather reduced to a defendant number on a docket. I wanted him to remember the man who taught him to fish, even if that man had been consumed by the monster I saw in the living room that day. My lawyer, a shark of a woman named Sarah, who Grandma Rose had hired immediately after kicking the family out, stood next to me. She checked her watch. "They're going to take the plea," Sarah said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Robert knows he can't win. The video evidence is damning. If he goes to trial, he risks a year in state prison. He's terrified of that." "Good," I said. It felt cold to say it, but the heat of my anger had calcified into something harder, more permanent. Inside the courtroom, Robert looked smaller. Without his recliner, without his house, without the echo chamber of my mother and Julian reinforcing his delusions of grandeur. He was just an old man in a cheap suit that didn't fit right anymore. He looked tired. His skin was gray. When he saw me enter, he didn't glare. He just looked away, staring at his shoes. The judge was a stern man who clearly had no patience for family drama spilling into his courtroom. He read the charges. Felony malicious destruction of property. Robert's public defender mumbled through the plea agreement. Guilty to a lesser charge of criminal mischief, 2 years of probation, mandatory anger management classes, and full restitution to the victim. When the judge asked Robert if he had anything to say, my father stood up. His hands were shaking. I waited for an apology. I waited for him to look at me and say, "I'm sorry I scared your son. I'm sorry I broke his heart." Instead, Robert cleared his throat and said, "I just want to go home, Your Honor. I've been under a lot of stress." That was it. No remorse. Just me. Even facing a felony conviction, Robert was the victim in his own story. The judge wasn't impressed. He peered over his glasses. "Mr. Anderson, you destroyed $5,000 of equipment belonging to a minor because he wouldn't share it? That sounds less like stress and more like a temper tantrum. You are lucky your mother isn't pressing charges for the damage to her floor." The gavel banged. It sounded nothing like the bat hitting the computer. It sounded final. Walking out of the courthouse, I ran into my mother, Linda. She was waiting by the benches, wringing a tissue in her hands. She looked 10 years older than she had 3 months ago. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled. "Joshua," she said, her voice cracking. I kept walking. "Joshua, please." She grabbed my arm. Her grip was weak. "We need help. The restitution." The court ordered him to pay $5,000, plus court fees. "We don't have it. We're living in a studio apartment in the East End. The rent is eating up Bob's entire pension." I stopped and looked at her. Grandma Rose already sent a check to cover Caleb's loss. "You don't owe me the money. You owe the court." "But the fees," she cried. "And Julian is so depressed. He can't find work that suits his talents. He needs help, Joshua. You have a good job. You have that big truck. Can't you just loan us a few thousand? Just until we get back on our feet." I looked at this woman who had watched her husband swing a baseball bat at my child and did nothing but cry about her own comfort. "Julian is 28, I said. "Tell him to sell his car. Tell him to sell his gaming console. Tell him to get a job at McDonald's. They're hiring. He can't work fast food." Mom gasped, offended. "He has anxiety." "Caleb has anxiety too," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, "because his grandfather smashed his dreams with a bat. But guess what? Caleb is still working. He's mowing lawns again. He's moving forward. If a 16-year-old can do it, Julian can do it." I pulled my arm free. "Don't call me again, Mom, unless it's an emergency involving Grandma. Otherwise, we're done." I walked away. I didn't look back. I knew that if I looked back, I might feel pity, and pity was the trap they had used to control me for decades. But while my biological family was collapsing into a black hole of their own making, a new family was forming around us. A digital family. I had posted the security footage on a tech forum, primarily to ask about the legal ramifications of the property damage. I didn't expect the avalanche. The internet is a strange, chaotic place, often filled with toxicity, but sometimes it acts like a collective immune system attacking a virus. My father and Julian were the virus. The video went viral. Millions of views. The comments section was a wall of fire. People were outraged. But more importantly, they were heartbroken for Caleb. They saw a kid who worked hard, built something beautiful, and had it destroyed by entitlement. Then the emails started coming. First, it was just supportive messages. Then, offers of cash, which I politely declined. Grandma had covered us. But then the heavy hitters arrived. A representative from a major PC component manufacturer, let's call them Titan Tech, reached out. Subject: "We want to make it right. Joshua, we saw the video. We saw the destroyed 4090. As engineers and gamers, that hurt our souls. But as humans, we can't let that be the memory your son has of his hard work. We want to send Caleb a care package. No strings attached. We just want to see him build again." I thought they meant a t-shirt or maybe a discount code. 2 days later, a freight truck pulled up to our apartment complex. Not a delivery van. A freight truck. The driver lowered a pallet onto the curb. It was wrapped in black plastic. "Sign here," he said. Caleb was at school. I dragged the boxes into the living room, feeling like a kid on Christmas. I waited for him to get home, When Caleb walked in, tossing his backpack on the sofa, he stopped dead. The living room was filled with boxes. And not just any boxes. These were stamped with logos he idolized. "Dad?" he whispered. "What is this?" "Open it," I said, handing him a box cutter. He sliced the tape on the biggest box. He pulled out a case. But it wasn't just a case. It was a limited edition, unreleased chassis made of brushed aluminum and tempered glass, etched with his gamer tag. I had mentioned it in the email. He opened the next box. A motherboard that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. The next box. Two RTX 4090s. The next box. A custom liquid cooling loop kit with gold-plated fittings. Caleb fell to his knees. He wasn't crying tears of sadness this time. He was overwhelmed. He picked up a graphics card, holding it like it was a holy relic. "Why?" he asked, looking at me. "Why would they do this?" "Because people appreciate hard work, Caleb," I said, sitting on the floor next to him. "And because the world isn't made up of people like your grandpa and Uncle Julian. There are good people out there. A lot of them." We spent the next week building. But this time it was different. We weren't just building a PC, we were exorcising a ghost. Every screw we tightened felt like we were locking away the memory of that bat. Every cable we routed was a connection to a future where we were safe. We live-streamed the build at the request of the company. Thousands of people tuned in. They cheered Caleb on in the chat. They gave him tips. When he peeled the plastic off the glass panel, the final step, the chat exploded with emotes and hearts. "It works!" Caleb shouted as the system posted, the screens, 3 of them now, lighting up the room. He turned to the camera and smiled. It was the first time I had seen him smile with his whole face since that day in the sunroom. But the surprises weren't over. Grandma Rose had settled into her new life at the assisted living facility, Lakeside Manor. It was a beautiful place, more like a resort than a nursing home. She had her own apartment, a balcony overlooking a garden, and a social calendar busier than mine. She called me a week after the new PC was finished. "Joshua, bring the boy, and bring his tools," she said. "Is something broken?" I asked. "No," she said. "I just need you to see something." We drove over. The facility was peaceful. We found Grandma in the community center, but she wasn't playing bingo. She was standing in a small, unused office space off the main library. "Grandma," Caleb asked. "This?" Grandma Rose said, waving her cane at the empty room. "I bought the lease on this room. It's part of my package here." "Okay," I said, confused. "Are you going to turn it into a knitting room?" "Don't be daft," she snapped playfully. "I have my apartment for knitting. This is for you, Caleb." Caleb blinked. "For me? I saw that video of you building the new machine," she said. "I saw how happy you were. But I also saw that you're working in your dad's cramped living room. You need a lab. You need a studio." She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. It was a blueprint. "I hired a contractor to do the wiring," she said. "High-speed fiber optic, soundproofing, dedicated circuits so you don't blow a fuse. But I want you two to finish the interior. Make it yours." "Grandma," I choked up. This is too much. You already gave us the check." "That check was for the damage," she said sternly. This is an investment. I want to see what you can do, Caleb. I want you to teach the other residents here about technology. Maybe help old Mrs. Gable reset her iPad password so she stops calling the front desk every hour." Caleb laughed. He hugged her, careful not to knock her over. "Thank you, Grandma. I promise I'll make it amazing." And so, the rising from ruins wasn't just about a computer. It was about rebuilding our lives. For the next 2 months, every weekend was spent at Lakeside Manor. We put up acoustic foam. We built custom desks. We installed shelving for Caleb's component collection. It became our sanctuary. It was a place where Robert's anger couldn't reach us. It was a fortress built on love, respect, and high-speed internet. Meanwhile, I heard through the grapevine, mostly from neighbors who gossiped, that Julian had tried to sell his story to a tabloid, claiming he was the victim of a viral smear campaign. The article ran in a local rag, but nobody cared. The comments section roasted him even harder than the original video. He ended up deleting his social media accounts entirely. He retreated into the shadows, a man who wanted the world to give him everything but ended up with nothing because he refused to lift a hand to earn it. We were rising. They were sinking. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to dive in and save them. I just watched from the shore, holding my son's hand, and turned my face toward the sun. 6 months later, the studio was finished. We called it the Rose Lab. Caleb had turned it into something incredible. It wasn't just a gaming room. It was a makerspace. There were 3D printers humming in the corner, printing prosthetics for a charity project Caleb had found online. There was a soldering station where he repaired electronics for the residents of the nursing home. And, of course, there was the Beast 2.0, sitting in the center like a crown jewel, its lights pulsing gently. It was Thanksgiving, a holiday that, in the past, filled me with dread. The memories of dry turkey, passive-aggressive comments about my salary, and Julian's endless complaints were etched into my DNA. But this year was different. We set up a long table in the Rose Lab. We ordered catering from the best Italian place in town because Grandma said she was retired from cooking turkeys. It was just the 3 of us. Grandma Rose, Caleb, and me. Plus, a few of Grandma's new friends who had stopped by. Mr. Henderson, a retired engineer who loved watching Caleb work, and Mrs. Gable, who finally remembered her iPad password thanks to Caleb's patient tutoring. The room was warm. It smelled of lasagna and garlic bread, mixed with the faint, electric scent of ozone from the printers. "This is nice," Grandma Rose said, taking a sip of sparkling cider. She looked around the room, her eyes resting on Caleb, who was showing Mr. Henderson how the liquid cooling pump worked. "It is," I agreed. "It's peaceful." "I heard from Linda today," Grandma said quietly. I stiffened. "Oh." She called the front desk. "Wanted to speak to me." I told the nurse to tell her I was busy playing Fortnite. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my bread. "You did not." "I certainly did," Grandma chuckled, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. "But the nurse told me she sounded desperate. Apparently, the landlord of their apartment is threatening eviction. Robert keeps getting into arguments with the neighbors. He tried to report the guy upstairs for walking too loudly." I shook my head. "He hasn't changed. Even after everything, he hasn't learned a single thing." "Some people don't, Joshua," Grandma said, her face turning serious. "Some people are like old dry wood. They don't bend. They just break. And when they break, they try to hurt anyone standing close enough to get hit by the splinters." She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was paper-thin, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "I am proud of you," she said. "Not because you are successful, not because you are a good father, but because you were brave enough to walk away. Breaking a cycle is harder than building a computer. It requires a different kind of strength." I looked over at Caleb. He was laughing at something Mr. Henderson said. He looked free. He didn't have that flinch reflex anymore. He didn't look over his shoulder, expecting to be criticized or robbed. "I had to do it for him," I said. "I couldn't let him grow up thinking that love is transactional. I couldn't let him think that family means letting people hurt you." "And you didn't," Grandma said. "You gave him a new definition of family. Look around. This is family." She gestured to the room, to the friends, to the laughter, to the shared passion. Later that evening, after the guests had left and Grandma had gone to her apartment to rest, Caleb and I stayed behind to clean up. "Dad?" Caleb asked, wiping down the soldering station. "Yeah, Bud. Do you think Do you think Grandpa ever thinks about us? I paused, holding a trash bag. It was a heavy question. I think he thinks about us a lot, I said honestly. But I don't think he thinks about us. He thinks about what he lost. He thinks about the control he doesn't have anymore. He misses the punching bags, Caleb. He doesn't miss the people. Caleb nodded slowly. I don't miss him, he said. Is that bad? No, I said, walking over and putting a hand on his shoulder. That's healthy. You miss the idea of a grandfather. You miss the person he should have been.